right, everybody, welcome to the new season of the Rise podcast. This is your host, Steve Schmidt. I'm not alone this time. I brought with me a couple of co-hosts that are pretty funny, and they're going to be awesome to listen to. I didn't want to do it alone anymore, and Four's a company on this episode. So I want to introduce to you, before we roll out this guest, and we've got a couple of back-to-backs here. You might say, gosh, it sounds like a lot of Refine Labs going on over there. Admittedly, we are fangirls and boys of Refine Labs. We see a lot of the work that we do in our day-to-day life inspired by them. A lot of it parallels with them, and we couldn't help but think that, Chris in the first episode and now Megan were the perfect two guests to get this kicked off. So before we introduce Megan and get into the bulk of this 40 minutes, I want to first introduce and have them give a shout out. Please welcome Brittany Warwick and Casey Carnavale, respectfully from Texas and Ohio, which is nowhere near South Dakota. What's up, guys? Welcome to the new season of the Rise podcast.
Yes, we're excited to be here.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, I didn't really have a choice because you made me have you on. So I guess
true.
That's
we
good.
Begged, obviously.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It might have been the other way around, but I think once I said Megan's going to be on, you guys said we're in. And so Megan, if you don't know Megan today, you probably don't have an internet connection. Or you just don't have good taste, because what's been going on over at Refine Labs, and I first followed Megan, just so you know, as I remember looking at her when she was with Managed by Q, and this was about 2.5 years ago. And she has really come into, I would say, a place of her own right now, where I think in the role, what's attracted to have for us to have her on this episode in particular was she's creating a kick-ass culture. On top of that, the things that we don't see or know that we see are the things that happen. I really want to dig into this on operations, right? What is operations in a company? How does it affect the end product? When we see Chris Walker talking on a podcast, we aren't thinking operations. But I guarantee, whether it's Megan or Chris or anybody from Refine, there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes. So Megan, without further ado, this has been a long time coming. Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to dig into the conversation today, and really happy that you want to talk about operations. I feel like often, operations teams are kind of like the unsung hero. And I always think about it as like the glue that holds everything together. And so much stuff has to happen, especially when you're building a company in a high growth phase. And so it's been a lot of fun, and it's true. A lot of the things that I focus on and that I work on aren't typically, super public and visible. So excited to take this conversation in a few directions today.
Well, I'm gonna ask the first question because I've known Carl, who came over to you guys from HubSpot. And so we're now seeing you bring on a ton of team members, and it really made a splash on LinkedIn and other social platforms. You guys rolled out sort of your culture guidebook, or I forget the exact name of it, but it was more of a playbook than it was an employee handbook, because God knows none of us read those. Yeah. And last I checked, mine was still sitting on the third shelf from the left. And so I want to talk about really two things, which I think the second one is going to be very operational and foundation, but talk to me about sales. So Refine Labs, if I had to think about Refine Labs, I think about Chris, I think about you. I'm now seeing more and more people come into the company, and people that a lot of them I wouldn't recognize, meaning they're not a LinkedIn sensation, meaning you found them, you sought them out, or they sought you out. But in sales in particular, when did you guys decide that you now need to also get someone who can generate pipe outside of your traditional, call it omni-channel social and marketing presences?
Yeah, it's a great question. And in fact, we actually are not doing any outbound. The inbound demand for partnering with us has just continued to compound over time as all of the brand and content marketing efforts that we've been doing. And so, when I first teamed up with Chris in the summer of 2020, he was doing all sales calls. One of the first things that I, started helping with was doing them as well. And for, till Q2 of 2021, only him and I were selling. And at the time when I would show up on a sales call, people were like, "Oh, where's Chris Walker?" People, initially, especially at the very beginning, Refine Labs was synonymous with Chris Walker. Yeah. And one of the things that I had called out when we first started working together, I was like, it's really important if we want to really build this company and scale it, that Refine Labs is a brand on its own, right? And not to discount, I mean, everything that Chris does is fueling the growth of the business, but that they can kind of, both of those brands can coexist and fuel one another and eventually get to a point where Refine Labs can stand on its own. And I feel like we're kind of at that point now where, of course, people associate him with the company, but they see so many other people. And it's not just him anymore. It's a company. And so we brought on MJ Peters as our head of growth in Q2 of 2021. And she took over internal marketing and started to pitch in on the sales side of things. And she was doing fantastic and really took over the majority of those calls. But as we're continuing to grow, our inbound demand is increasing, and we realized we needed more people to take these consultations and to have them. And so we had been following Carl for a while. We really appreciated his approach. And we approached him to come join us to really think about how to build out our sales team for scale. We're not intending to pivot and include outbound. We still have a 100% inbound model. So our sales process is unique in that it's really defining what that consultation process is and how we move prospects through the process to really make sure that we can really help them and they're a best fit customer for us. Additionally, internally, we've taken a director of demand gen and promoted them into the sales team really as that subject matter expert. So we have Carl as an expert in sales, and we have a demand subject matter expert as kind of the foundation of our newfound sales team that we're looking to continue to expand. Yeah.
I see Casey looking at this going, welcome to my life. And
I was going to say that.
I see Brittany going, yep, see, told you it can't be about you, Steve. And I said, thank God, because I don't want it to be anymore. And quite frankly, I mean, I can only relate to that with the appreciation you get when you get people around you saying, we want to help. We want to, make this about the company and not about you, because it is, I don't want to make this sound arrogant. It's a lot of weight to carry the sales calls, the content, and eventually it becomes diluted in its value because you just don't have enough time to put into it and energy. Casey, I was going to quick ask you a question. This is your first question ever on a podcast that you're hosting. So what a great one. So when you hear her say that and you think about her jumping on that first call and everybody's going, where is Chris Walker? Like, talk to us. Because Casey, the unique thing is with Casey, she's our first founderless sale, meaning I looked at Casey, said, when she came into the company, you're an AE today. Guess what? You're not going to be anymore. You're going to go back and be in a BDR or SDR. You got to do that for 4 to 5 months. Show me you can do what you say you can. Then if you develop into that, we will start to make the transition from founder-led, where we grew revenue from 0 to 500,000 in MRR year one with only doing LinkedIn organic, to we'll go and do outbound. So we'll finally do the thing that we do for other people for ourselves, which she's been very good at. So Casey, let's touch on that a little bit, because I think other people are in your position, just so you know, they're sitting there going, hey, when am I going to get to kind of do the sales thing, since that's what you hired me for?
Yeah. Megan, when you said that, I was like, oh my God, story of my life. Like, people are like, is it just you? I'm like, yeah, that's just me. Sorry. Hi. Yeah. like the star is not here today. You just have me. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely exciting to be like the first person that Steve kind of hands his baby over to, right? Like, he's built this company, but then in turn, you say it's a lot, Steve, on your shoulders. But then to me, I'm like, I can't mess this up. Like, geez. But we worked as a team, right? Like, just like you and Chris do, like Steve and I work together and, tag team when we need to on appointments. So.
Yeah. And
did you feel pressure? Sorry, Megan. Did you feel pressure?
I'm in sales. Don't I feel pressure every day of my life? Like, that's the that's what I'm here for. Just here for the pressure. So
for Megan, though, you come on a call. I mean, you're like, hey guys, by the way, I know what I'm doing too. Was it just like, boom, I know what I'm doing because I'm although I'm new, I'm not new to this? Or were you able to did it take you time to sink into what Refine Labs was, to really extract it from Chris's brain to say, no, we're going to grow up. And Chris, the number one problem for founders is extracting what's in your brain and getting it to everybody else, so we all know how to be a company, versus what did Chris say we're doing now?
Yep. And, my situation was interesting because I've done sales and customer success for a long time. I can talk to anybody about anything, and I have a lot of confidence about that. But I'm not a demand marketer, and I have never claimed to be so. And so that was definitely my area where that kind of dinged my confidence a little bit. But the way that I tackle things, especially things I don't know, is like, I'm just going to give it my best shot and like see what happens. And what I found was I'm actually really good at doing discovery calls and really understanding, what does this person need? What matters to them? What are their goals? So I was able to extract all of the information that I needed. And although, if someone put a gun to my head, no, I could not run a Google paid search ad, but I know how to talk about it. And I know enough to assess whether we can be a good fit for a company and whether we are, whether they'll be a good partner to us. And so I quickly realized, I'm like, no, I got all the skills I need to have these conversations. And it only takes me 5 minutes to win over somebody before they stop thinking about Chris Walker.
I tried to put a Google ad out the other day on my own at about 4 a.m. I don't recommend it. I think you're smarter for that, because then I tried to undo it once I accidentally did it. It didn't work out so well. I think it's interesting. Well, Brittany on our side, so her background when we approach this, and this is good to kind of get a rounded view, is Brittany came to us from the military, and we're like, perfect, startup military, could not be any different. Let's hire her. So she's coming in from a marketing lens with more of a PR background. So as we're talking to her about, call it industry isms, right? Whether it's CAC or go down the list of acronyms, and she's looking at us like, y'all are crazy. I don't know what you're really talking about. And now 2 months, 3 months later, she can go, I understand most of it. And I think it's interesting, Brittany, when you think of that, the first thing she said was, it would be great if we can make this more about Tidal and less about Steve Schmidt, which on the surface sounds like that would hit me in a weird way, but it didn't. I think for any founder, your hope and dream is like, you want to get a supporting cast. Mm-hmm. You want to get team members around you. God forbid you can go on a vacation, or you want to meet with somebody else and go, Casey, you got this. I don't need to worry about it. Brittany, talk about us from a lens coming in now, a third angle, which I think it's just 3 different views. And then we're going to kind of get into some more questions with Megan, is when you walked into a company, not even being from the industry, a startup, a bootstrap startup, you're learning all kind of words. What does that feel like when you walk into it? For all our listeners out there who have always thought that startup scene romantic, right? We all know they're fun, but they're a lot of work. What did that feel like for you, Brittany?
Yeah, talk about chaos. I just was overwhelmed, to say the least. I just kept looking around being like, where is our checklist? Do we not have a checklist for everything? Just coming from something that was extremely structured, probably one of the most structured businesses in America. Government still is a business, but definitely was a big shift with that. But going back to the whole Steve and the Steve show and changing it to Tidal, Megan, I think you would agree that being able to separate the two makes it so that Casey can succeed, because it's going to be really hard for anyone else to succeed in their role if it's still just they're honed in on Steve. So breaking those two apart is so important so that you can have a team succeed, which I think once it's presented in that way, I think Steve was like, well, yeah, I want everybody to succeed. He's incredibly supportive and wants his team to do well. And he's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. I want them to do well. So that's what we got to do. So we're definitely switching towards that and really working towards separating the two and building that Tidal name.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's critical. If you want to grow beyond, a small kind of consulting lifestyle business, you have to be okay with that. And for the record, Chris always has been. He's had aspirations to grow this into a big company and hasn't really had any ego about it. And so we even just recently launched the Marketing Movement, which is the Refine Labs podcast. We have everyone at our company recording episodes and contributing to that while we're continuing to publish State of Demand Gen, of course. And so that's just another example of another initiative designed to achieve that outcome.
I love that. I was doing some research on you this morning. I had some Refine Labs playing. My wife loved it, right? She walks up from her Peloton ride and she's like sweaty and she's listening to podcasts about marketing. She's like, what is wrong with you? She's like, the kids aren't here and you're listening to marketing podcasts. We have like a half hour alone. I'm like, yeah, this is a great use of time, right? I'm like, I'm learning. And I can't remember who it was within the company, but it really walked through this idea. And this will come into really helping define your role. I think we are tricked to believe that we've heard so much about B2B needs to be more like B2C, and we all agree, God, please, can we please just make this easy? And the analogy I heard was, well, we're not really selling chocolate bars here. This is not a transactional experience in B2B. There's education. There's a lot of work that needs to go through, which is kind of like how we've got caught up in this. And the analogy was really like, when someone's ready to buy a house, there are so many steps ahead of before when they say, I'm ready to buy a house, that need to come into play when you want to, quote unquote, market to them, for them to remember you when it's time to go, whether it's the title company or all the rigmarole that goes into house buying. When you guys view a customer journey, I'm assuming that, I'm starting to really pay attention to you guys on TikTok because it's different content than it's on LinkedIn. And I'm really enjoying kind of this new feel. Are you really looking at those channels along your customer's touch point? Is a real ABM experience, given your call points, going to be SaaS companies who at least have, call it 20 to 30 grand to spend on that marketing, where you're really in that long game burn with them to be there for when they're ready?
Yeah, great question. So TikTok and YouTube right now are experimental and exploratory channels for us. And so the way, podcast and LinkedIn are continuing to drive 100% of our business. And we want to get ahead of the next channel and the next strategy. And so right now we've chosen only two to really lean in and experiment with. With TikTok, the current goal is to figure out how the platform operates. You have to create content in a different way. If you stay too focused and get really specific on talking about, marketing metrics and this and that, that audience is not really receptive to consuming that. And so what we're doing right now is we're just testing. We're putting out different content to really understand what is this platform, what type of content is going to resonate, both through Chris's channel as well as the Refine Labs channel. You guys have probably also seen Todd Clauser's hilarious TikToks. I love
that guy.
He is going to get scooped up by Netflix or something to create original content for that. But that's okay if he ends up there. And so right now we're really just in experiment mode. There isn't a super clear strategy yet, because what we believe is the first step is you need to understand the channel, and you need to understand the dynamics of the channel and the platform before you can actually craft an explicit strategy of how that channel is going to serve you. And so both with YouTube and TikTok, those are kind of in that phase right now. And we hope over the next several months, we continue to really get a command of them, and then can be a little bit more intentional about how we're leveraging them. But the good news is we don't need it, right? And we're doing this experimentation and this exploration when we're not under the gun. We don't expect it to drive revenue for us. We have great engines that are doing that now. So we don't care if it takes some time, and we can be patient and really explore and figure out how it is going to work for us in the future. So
that would be considered research and development, right? Under sort of the budget line, if you will. Okay.
Definitely.
I think that's a fresh air for everybody, not only on this podcast and everybody else, because when we had a meeting in Q4, we were talking conceptually about the idea of TikTok. And I remember feeling kind of overwhelmed, being like, we've just got LinkedIn down collectively with if you had to compare it to the store you walked into, we are now expanding through the company and encouraging them. Casey now has been posting for about 4 months pretty consistently in her own method. It's not a copy Steve method, thank God. Brittany just made her first post the other day. Now, Brittany can also be seen doing famous dances on TikTok. Actually, just one. She's got one TikTok dance video and a LinkedIn post, but it doesn't mean she hasn't written over 2,000 different press releases and can write content like a complete badass. So I think when people hear channels, before they're open to them, they want to shut down and go, sounds like too much. I can't do it. I don't want to be expected to deliver off that. I don't know what. I don't know how much it's going to cost. TikTok, I don't know how to make those frames happen in the video. Can't learn it. Let's just go to LinkedIn. Where if LinkedIn's just like everything else before it in the history of man and womankind, it will eventually shift into another platform. And so I'm really curious, when you think of research and development, somebody out there's listening going, well, it must be nice. I'm not Refine Labs. we don't have the time or the budget to just play around on social media all day, you guys. We got to actually work. I try to do my worst impersonation of a human being there ever, by the way. But talk to those people, because I can guarantee if we thought it, other people are thinking it, right? I got to make sales calls. I don't have time for social media.
Yeah, and I think the way that our strategy has operated from the beginning is all of the efforts that we do initially on LinkedIn, then on the podcast, that is driving 100% of net new customer acquisition. So, and not to say that, outbound is an appropriate and fine way to go about it. So not to say that everyone should strive for 100% inbound, not saying that at all, but we are taking that percentage of time, and we have found a strategy that works to acquire customers. And we also are very focused. And so there's a lot of other things that we could be testing and trying and experimenting with, and we're choosing not to. And we're choosing to stay very focused on a couple of channels, having clear owners at the company of who are exploring them, creating space for them to do so. So it's really about focused prioritization. And I would guarantee you that whoever that other person is, you're spending the same amount of time to acquire customers. We're just choosing a different way to go about doing so. And so it's not about either or. It's about what is the overall strategy? What is the outcome you're trying to achieve? And are you being smart about how you're allocating your time to the most high impact activities that are going to drive the results that you want?
The purpose of a talent destination is to attract, empower, and grow people to do the best work of their lives. At a talent destination, you can show up as your true self and you're accepted for who you are. You can feel safe to express opinions and engage in respectful disagreement. Well-being is prioritized and flexible work is encouraged. A vision for the future is unique, compelling, and important. You participate in playing the long game, maintaining integrity, honesty, and respect as non-negotiables. Creating space to explore and innovate, experiment, and try new things. Having clear expectations and receiving regular feedback, holding one accountable to the challenges of growth. Being surrounded by diverse, intelligent, and driven people who you can constantly learn from. Being appreciated, recognized, and rewarded for a job well done. Becoming a better person and being compelled to pay it forward to help others. This is what it means to build a talent destination and not just a company.
Culture is part of operations. And you shared with me and Casey and Brittany before the episode, we had asked you, we said, you know what, Megan, we're going to do this new cool thing where we're going to have this teaching moment. And mostly selfishly, we want to learn collectively. And when we asked you to pick out a topic, you picked out the topic of talent destination. Last 5 years, I think we've heard tons about diversity and inclusion and all sorts of buzzwords that were extremely important. But when we think about being a talent destination and really catering to not only your targeted employee, because sometimes you just don't know, you really want the person you don't know, but you want to be able to have that message resonate with anybody and everybody, whether it's myself here or a 21-year-old female in Russia or China, right? We're all different people. We come from different places. So I want this little teaching moment here, which is this unique part of our episode. And then we're going to get very conversational after this, talk about operations. Walk us through that so our audience can appreciate what you've recently implemented and your thought around what it is to develop a talent destination. I have to think it's easier said than done, but show us what it looks like.
Definitely. So the concept of a talent destination is this. Instead of thinking about, okay, I'm going to build a company, I'm going to hire people, we're going to make money, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. When you really think about what a business is, it's a group of people with shared values and a common purpose that are working together to achieve a goal. And so I wanted to reframe the concept of a company. And especially now, where the reality is the power is in the hands of people to choose where they work. And if we want to attract the right talent, we need to think about creating a company and a culture that is distinct and that serves the needs of what people actually want in a workplace today. And so I coined that phrase talent destination as like, we're creating a place where the best people want to spend their time and do the best work of their lives. And then you think about, okay, well, what does that mean? What conditions actually equate to a talent destination? And so I had kind of like listed out these like 10 ingredients, if you will, in the talent destination recipe. And the point is to highlight the conditions that one needs to create in order to create the conditions for people to do great work. And so you want me to kind of talk through each of the components, break it down for you guys?
Yes, ma'am.
So the first one is really about psychological safety. It's being able, it's a place where I can show up as my true self and be accepted for who I am. I've worked at a lot of great places, and I've worked at places that, where the culture wasn't as good. And I know how important it is and how it feels as an individual to be somewhere where I feel, accepted, respected, and challenged versus the opposite. And so it's really thinking about how can I do that and how can I make an environment that is inclusive for everyone. The second one is a place where I feel safe to express my true opinion and engage in respectful disagreement. I love when people disagree with me. That's when I learn. Who wants an army of yes men? What is that? Where is that going to get us, right? Unfortunately, there are a lot of leaders out there that don't like dissent and that just want people to do what they say. But a lot of people don't like working for people like that. And so being clear and inviting that debate and that discussion. The third is a place that prioritizes my well-being and embraces flexibility in when and how I work. This is very relevant for the time that we're in right now, right? We've proven that you don't have to be in an office to do good work. Everyone has gone through their own struggles over the last couple of years and want to be at a place where they can take time off and they have good balance and they're not being pushed to the brink of mental exhaustion or physical exhaustion. The fourth is a place with a vision for the future that is different, unique, compelling, and important. So when we talk about a company as just a group of people working together to achieve a goal, how you keep them together is through shared purpose and values. And shared purpose comes from, why are we here? What are we doing, right? Where are we trying to go? And you have to beat that drum all of the time. This is where we're going. This is what we're creating. This is the impact we're going to make. This is the change we're going to influence. That's what gets people motivated, right? And people need that. And the reality is, if you want to build a successful business, that's how you do it. You have to take a stand and be afraid to change the way something has always been done and do it in a different way, right? That's the mantra of a category creator. Number 5 is a place with a long-term mindset and an unwillingness to sacrifice integrity, honesty, and respect to get ahead. So this is a big one for me. I have left companies because I felt I was put in a position where I had to choose between my integrity and what they wanted me to do. And I will never compromise my integrity for a job or a company. Like, I have to live with myself. And unfortunately, not everybody may be in a position where they feel like they can actually do that. And they might bend what they would otherwise normally do because they feel that they have no choice. And that's terrible in my perspective. Number 6 is a place where I'm provided the time and the space to be creative, explore, and try new things. We have a value at Refine Labs about experimentation and that we embrace failure. We succeed or we learn. We accept no guilt and we assign no blame for failure. And it's really important to model that as leaders so your team really believes that that is true. And I don't believe that you can innovate without failure. It's part of the process. And so instead of shying away from it, just embrace it. And the reality is nothing is ever as bad as you think it is. No failure is ever as catastrophic as people perceive they could be. And it's important to remember that. Number 7 is a place with clear expectations, regular feedback, and accountability that challenges me to grow. This is really important, I think, especially in a remote or distributed workplace. Every new team member that joins our team, we go through an individual success plan in their first 1 to 2 weeks, where we say, I'm going to tell you exactly what great looks like in your role. Here are the core competencies that we want you to embody. Here are specific examples of what that means here at Refine Labs. We're going to talk in 90 days and give you feedback on how you're doing on these exact things. No surprises. Performance feedback in other places is typically like, hey, you're here, congratulations. And then 6 months in, here's all this constructive criticism. And who's been there where you're like, I didn't even know I had to do that thing. Nobody, like, what? And so it's like, before you give feedback, set expectations, provide clarity, and then provide ongoing feedback along the way. And then certainly, performance assessments have a place and they're impactful as well. And the other piece of it, though, is hold people accountable. People like to be held accountable, and you can do it in a way that is kind. You don't have to be an asshole about it. Mm-hmm. Number 8 is a place where I am surrounded by diverse, intelligent, and driven people who I can constantly learn from. One of the most frequently answered answers to the question, why did you like the place that you worked? The people I worked with, hands down. And so when you can assemble like a team of A players, people want to be on the team, right? I want to be on the Avengers. That's where the cool kids are. Like, that's where I'm going to learn and grow. And so when you can assemble a great team, people want to be a part of it. And people's professional growth is fueled by the community and the team members around them. Number 9 is a place where I am appreciated, recognized, and rewarded for a job well done. This seems so simple, and most companies suck at recognition, appreciation. Literally, I just give out thank yous all day long. That's all it is. That's all you need. You give someone a thank you, they can ride high for a week. You'd be like, that was a really good job. You killed that project. Awesome work. Little things like that go so long, and it's completely free, completely underutilized. We do weekly shout outs. We have peer-to-peer shout outs. We do special monthly value awards. I like to provide positive reinforcement in every single conversation that I have with anyone on the team. Life is hard enough. Like, people feel so valued when appreciation is expressed to them. And the last one is a place that makes me a better person, practitioner, and leader that wants to pay it forward to help others. I've been in my career long enough to have achieved a lot of the things that I thought I wanted, to internalize the fact that the most rewarding part of what I do is seeing other people achieve their goals. And everyone will get to that realization, but it takes, everyone has to walk their own path to get there. But I want a talent destination to be the place where they get to that point and they're like, being of service to others is what is really meaningful in life. So my challenge is to not just build a company, but to build a talent destination.
That, you said it, it sounds almost idealistic. It sounds so pure in its intent, right? And this is a part of the culture playbook, right, that you all released.
Yep.
Yep. So when we think about that, I will say, you meant passing the torch, or when you mentioned that, I think even this is, a lot of people think content. You're paying it forward on content on a podcast, because you know it because people will write you. People on our team have written you and told me about it later. I'm like, that's awesome. Like I had no idea they were doing it. It was unsolicited. Hey, I reached out to Megan. She made time for me. It took a little bit of time, but I got to sit down and have a meaningful conversation, pick her brain. And people are learning from you in real time, Megan. And I don't know if everybody realizes that when they set on this endeavor to. I get the sense very much it ain't about you. This is not the Megan show where you're like, all right, lights, camera, Megan. You're so rich with in knowledge that is not shared by the world, and it seems so simple. We go, we've heard that before, Megan, but that's not easy in a remote environment. You're like, you're right, it's not. But if you commit to it, what we're not hearing is the failures of that experiment, and that's okay, right? Because anytime you have a process, there's going to be things that don't work out. And what we found here, and I want Casey to kind of talk about this and Brittany too, is when you're coming into a company and the vision is unclear, like how do you contribute to that versus running the other way and going, well, it's not well defined, not a lot of process and procedures. I'm out of here. That's what I need. I thought this would be fun. This is nuts. I'd love to converse about that because you've been on the hiring side and the building side, Megan, and not too long ago you were coming into those companies. But Casey and Brittany, let's talk about that so those people listening can either identify with that, obviously ask questions to Megan via LinkedIn. They can hit her up or anybody here as well.
Yeah, I would say that you just have to be willing to build, right? Like you can't come in and say, this is my role and I'm not going to do anything else besides this role. Because it could change in the morning, right? Like I would come in and be like, oh, well, you have to pitch it and you've got to learn a new client today. Okay, that wasn't what I thought I was going to do today, but I'm going to do it because that's what the company needs. And you just have to be willing to pivot and to build. I would say those are like my two things that I learned very quickly. That has made me successful. No day's the same. Get it together. Get your work done.
Yeah, get your shit together, Casey.
Yeah.
I love it. Brittany, how about you?
Yeah, Casey, I completely agree with being fluid and being able to adapt to the situations that are handed to you. I think coming in, I wasn't prepared for that, but that has been one of the most fulfilling portions of this job that I wasn't prepared for, is the different tasks and the different challenges and the different projects that I wouldn't have necessarily picked out on my own that are challenging me to grow and to teach myself and to educate myself in ways that I didn't expect to. So not only is it, doing my day-to-day task and doing, supporting the business, but overall as a human, I think my skill set is just continuing to grow, which is super cool, which is what you ultimately want to be doing in any position that you're in, gaining new skills, gaining new assets to continue to grow as a professional. And I think being in the, speaking just for Tidal, I think one of the best portions that I was not prepared for is how willing people are to teach you and help you. Coming from, I can tell you everything about aviation. I know tons of things from working in the private sector of aviation as well as the military. I know nothing about sales. I literally thought they were speaking a foreign language. But today I'd be able to tell you all these cool things. And at no point has anyone ever looked at me like I was dumb or treated me as if I was less for not knowing those things. They've been so incredibly patient and understanding and kind, no matter how many times I'm like, pause, I'm not tracking. I feel like I text Steve once a week being like, I'm not tracking. I don't understand what you're saying. But that willingness to have people who are educated and learn and know these things that are willing to share that knowledge and not gatekeep it. And they want you to succeed, which is super cool.
Gatekeeping, you just said the poison word for Refine Labs, right? We don't gate any content. We don't gate anything. And I think that's where we really vibe with you guys, is we look at you as almost the wrong word to be sister company, but like we look at what you are doing in this space and sometimes fail to realize that we're doing something similar on the complete other side of the aisle, which is really not on the other side at all. Sales and marketing, as we all know, are synonymous. I want to break down the operations of those two things. So when you look at the function of your day-to-day, you've got leads coming in, you've got big projects. That's the thing we never get to hear about, by the way. And so we get to hear about all of this awesome, like stuff out of your brains around people are always asking you and Chris and go down the list. Hey guys, what do you think about this? What do you think is this? What is dark social? What is demand gen versus lead gen? And you get a lot of questions because most people don't know and they're insanely curious about what this stuff is because it's new to them. They are going, wow, all these big cool words and these guys are smart and I want to learn this so I can do it. Is you have to sit in the background and, by the way, pull all this off in real time. And that's what we don't see is we're not your customers. We don't get to see these projects succeed. So I'd love to walk in operationally when a customer comes to you from implementation time through their journey, what does that lift look like? And when you sit back, unless you guys are the only company on the face of the world to ever succeed every time and win big every time, like what does failure look like too? And how do you recover? Because those things all tie back to operations because you are the access point on those.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, so we start working with a customer and we have a pretty, well-defined and documented customer journey of, the key activities that we're going to deploy, over their first year with us and, what we expect the, results to be. And we've done a decent job of defining our ideal customer and doing our best in the sales process to make sure it's a good fit. And so let me walk you through kind of the ideal setup, and then I'll kind of open the curtain and tell you about how sometimes things end up actually playing out. And so, ultimately when we're kicking off with a customer, there's a lot of things that we have to do in the first 60 days to, from administrative things to getting access to their accounts and CRM, to, actually building creative and launching campaigns. And so typically the first 60 days is a real big push to complete a lot of the core foundational items that are required to run our framework and our strategy at the customer account. So there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of infrastructure to be built. We're getting to know them. We're getting to know their customers. And so there's a lot of activity there. We typically then by month 3, we've launched a couple campaigns. We're starting to get some feedback. We're starting to get some traction. And then I have a phrase for month 4 to 6. I call it the vulnerable period. And this is the time where, maybe the honeymoon phase has worn off a little bit. And we're kind of just a couple months away from starting to see some meaningful pipeline results. And they're kind of is this working? Should we just go back to doing what we were doing before? When can we expect to see more pipeline and revenue, right? It's that middle time where am I second guessing myself? Is this really working? We're typically able to navigate the vulnerable period effectively. And usually at about the 6-month mark, we start to, for the majority of our clients, really able to point to concrete outcomes that we've driven. That really bolsters the confidence that the partnership is working. And if we can get to that 6-month mark and get to some of those key results, that's really one of the key milestones for us where we feel excellent, this has the potential to be a really strong long-term partnership because we know if we start to see these signals that everything's working and those signals are just going to compound to even more business results over time. What happens if we get through the vulnerable period and things still aren't looking good? We've continued to raise our prices. If you haven't checked out our pricing page lately, check it out. And with that, with higher prices comes higher expectations. And so we certainly have customers where, for one reason or another, we are not seeing the intended results that we're hoping to see. And really, that's when you have to have a lot of hard conversations. And there's typically a few different reasons for it. One is there was a miss in the foundational period that caused a significant delay. And that kind of set us back in our timeline to miss that 6-month mark. If typically that's the case and we feel really strongly that we just need a little bit more time and that things are working, it's really just having an honest conversation and explaining what happened, the impact that had, and when we will, start to see those results. And for the most part, in those cases, we're typically able to navigate that and keep them committed to the strategy. As we've grown the company and as our ICP has evolved, I think one of the most common things that we realize for the majority of our customers that have churned is they weren't ready for the strategy to work. They were almost too early of a company where they were still figuring out pricing and positioning and messaging. They didn't really have any inbound demand. And starting from scratch is very different than accelerating flow that is already there, right? And our model is really acceleration of demand versus from scratch, right? For the services we provide. We kind of model with how we manage content and brand marketing for Refine Labs, how you can do that from scratch. But Chris was posting on LinkedIn for a year before he started making meaningful revenue, right? And then, then those conversations, I have always taken the approach of being honest. Hey, you guys have some bigger things I think you need to be focusing on, and maybe we're not the best fit, right? And those are hard conversations because we were always confident in the sales process that we could help them. Typically, they're extremely disappointed. And they, the customer can perceive it like, oh, we're making an excuse or we're putting it back on them. And that's not the intention, but we don't want to keep going down a path that isn't actually going to work, right?
Right.
We've taken those learnings though, and we have really crystallized our ICP around the type of company, the stage that they need to be at. And the other piece of it is philosophical alignment. If the CMO wants to run lead gen, it's not going to work. And so this happens in many customer situations. Our main point of contact is great. They purchase our service. Oh, one day they're leaving the company. And then a new head of marketing is coming in their place. And they are not aligned to what we're doing. That's not going to work either. It's just going to taper off, right? And so the philosophical alignment and finding the right company at the right stage that has enough of that foundational place, that's where we've learned those lessons. And we have, every time that happens, we make sure we're not going to bring on a customer like that again, where we don't think we'll be successful.
Demand gen versus lead gen. We'll cover it again. Demand gen is different than lead gen. How so? And what are the common misconceptions associated with those two being the same versus completely different?
The simplest way to put it is lead gen is collecting contact information, and demand gen is creating real desire from your target buyer to want to consider purchasing your product.
How do you measure demand gen, since you guys are often citing old and antiquated metrics that people are measuring and lead attribution and all these fancy predictable softwares that we can buy now that say, nope, you don't need Refine Labs, just buy our software and it will tell you exactly what to do.
Yeah, I mean, our key measurements are, high intent qualified inbound demo requests, sales qualified opportunities, and closed won revenue. We have some leading metrics, in platform, and we, monitor increase in website visitors. And so there are some other things, but qualified inbound demo requests, sales qualified opportunities, and closed won revenue are the three most important KPIs for us and our customers.
Megan, I have a question for you, and I've been asked this question, but keep in mind, the first place I've met you, we've never met IRL, as the kids said, not in real life yet. It's a goal. Let's make it happen. But, I saw you on LinkedIn, and this was way before Refine Labs, back when you were with Q and doing all these things. And it was an inspiration, and just seeing some of that thought leadership has been threaded throughout time. But knowing that there's the Hughes, the Jake Dunlap, Scott Leese, go down this list of people who are doing this and have been doing it a long time. I think people forget that you've been doing this a long time, this thing called personal branding that now is contributing to Refine Labs. We've been doing it, and we're starting to see too that people think we can't do what you do. And I'm like, we've only been doing it a year. So help me walk through when you get that question, when people go, well, how does Refine Labs do it? Because that's what we want to do. And you kind of go, well, let me tell you how hard that is to get everybody kind of clicking on the same page. I'd love to walk through that and talk about how easy it is, but really how hard it is to orchestrate at a company level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people also see what's happening now, and they think that it all happened relatively quickly, when the truth is this is multiple years in the making, right, of getting to the point where we are now. I started posting on LinkedIn. Ironically, both Chris and I started at the beginning of 2019 without knowing each other, actually. He was focused on his marketing content. Look at early Chris Walker posts too. They're very different from what he does today.
They are.
The story of when I got started, I was a COO at a company called Managed by Q, and my CEO was giving me a hard time because I couldn't recruit fast enough. So he's like, I don't know what you got to do, but like figure this out. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to like start investing on posting more regularly on LinkedIn, building a brand for myself and the company. And initially my goal was recruiting. I'm like, I need to attract top talent. And so I started my journey then. And it worked. After about a couple of months, I was able to build my network. I was getting more inbounds. I was reaching out to people for open roles. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, like this actually works. Like this is a viable strategy. And it started with recruiting. What was funny is the company at the time was acquired by WeWork. It was like really exciting till it wasn't. WeWork, IPO fail of 2019. I had to lay off the majority of the company, including myself. So then the next thing I was like, okay, I don't have a job. And so I was like, I'm not going to update my resume. And I just made a post on LinkedIn and I was like, well, looking for work. And basically within 3 weeks after that post, I had like 10 lunches or interviews with CEOs and founders that were interested in hiring me just because I had started to build a reputation on LinkedIn. Got 10 meetings, 3 offers, accepted 1, right? Then I took a job at this other company, Platters, was there for a short time. They were negatively impacted by the pandemic, which is why I left.
Sure.
But then LinkedIn was where Chris and I connected and then started engaging with each other's content. He asked me to do some podcasting before the State of Demand Gen was even launched. Him and I started to get to know each other. And then when I left Platters after the pandemic, I had built a relationship with Chris over time, and he had reached out and was like, hey, like, let's talk about maybe teaming up and building Refine Labs. And so it's really interesting. There's a lot of reasons why you can build a personal brand on LinkedIn, but there's also a lot of goals you can achieve. And my goals have changed over time, right? So whether it was recruiting, whether it was getting a job for myself, networking and, finding your future business partner. And now my main angle lately is really around building the employer brand of Refine Labs, right? And similarly, I joined the company. There was about 6 of us. We're about to hit 100 people, and I need to hire 100 more people by the end of the year. So currently, the main reason why I'm, the main goal right now for me is employer branding and recruiting. And so that was kind of my LinkedIn journey and how I kind of leveraged it for some different reasons over time. And frankly, I also get inbound DMs for people, prospective Refine Labs customers, because people know I work here, right? And I sell along with Chris. So it also supplements customer acquisition.
And income.
Yeah, right. Megan, what do you say to the people that are posting and then they don't get enough likes or they get discouraged because there's not enough interaction on their posts? Like, what do you tell the people at early stages personal branding?
Yeah, what I tell people is if you're looking to get like a quick fix or a quick return on this, that's not the mindset or the goal that you should have. And the reason that I'm consistent with it is because I know, frankly, my goals are probably going to change over time. And I've proven to myself that I can pivot my strategy and leverage the platform for a lot of different things. I have like 21,000 followers, which is a lot, but there are people like Chris has like almost 80. I'm friends with Justin Welsh, has like, 200 or something. Like people have a lot more followers, but I'll be honest with you, I don't care about my follower count. Because if the goals that I'm trying to achieve, new customers, recruiting top talent, like I'm able to achieve those goals completely irregardless of how many likes a post gets, how many comments, or how many followers that I have. So I'm focused on, am I achieving the goals, not what are these engagement metrics looking like? And it took me time. It took a long time for me to get any meaningful engagement on the platform. And I kind of expected that going in. And I think if you focus more on what are the end goals and am I moving closer to those, focusing less on some of the vanity metrics would be my recommendation.
I'll just chime in quick. The first video I ever made was me walking through a parking lot when I was selling managed IT services in South Dakota of a school. And I was like one of those things, I'm like, keep on grinding or something really, really stupid and simple. And I remember I was like, I got to delete this. This is terrible. And all of a sudden I look back and it's like 38 likes and 20 comments. And I'm like, I got to make another video. Like this works. I'm in a parking lot of a school saying like, hey, I'm out cold calling and in the middle of nowhere. And it was interesting because then I was like, maybe this video thing. And of course you hear with video, which is Chris's big thing. And now Refine Labs is, he said when he started to do video, that's when things started to pop. And video, obviously, from an algorithm standpoint, you really have to pay attention to video being impact, right? That's where people are going to engage. And if he does video well, and to your point, when you go back and look at his first video, which I did, it is nothing like now. Like it looks like a VHS cassette from like a family reunion in like 2002, exactly. Compared to the quality he's putting into it and you guys are putting into it now. So I think that's wild.
Absolutely. Video really creates trust, right? The text can be extremely effective, so people shouldn't feel like they have to do video to get started. But video creates, I get on calls with people that I've never met, and they're like, I kind of feel like I know you because I've seen you on video so many times, right? So it's a great way to build credibility and trust. And similarly,
what are you going to do? Sorry, Megan. What are you going to do when the metaverse comes? Like how? Like in seriousness, like if you had to look out 10 years, my guess is Refine Labs is going to be playing in that space. Have you guys even had a fun conversation about like, that's going to be insane when I can literally just spin up a pair of goggles and be in a room with you and Chris? We can all be there with you.
I just bought my husband the Oculus to try it out. So we've been having a little fun with it. I'm still kind of trying to figure out the concept in theory all makes sense, but I think as I've been playing around with it a little, I feel like we haven't really cracked the code of how that's really going to work. Because the current theory and the tools in place has actually existed for a while. And I feel like there's got to be a reason it hasn't really caught on. But I feel like there's some innovation or some twist on this concept that's going to like make it a lot more sticky for people. But I think more broadly, and especially when you think just about like the future of work, I do think, especially the pandemic accelerated this, right? Although I love in-person interaction, I think it's going to be less and less required going forward. I also think like kind of finding creative ways to work more asynchronously. Like it's not going to last just having back-to-back Zoom meetings all day, every day. Like I think people are already getting sick of it and there's diminishing returns on that. And so it's interesting to think about how it could influence and impact different ways of working in the future for sure.
Yeah. I think it'd be cool if we were doing it right now, though. If we all threw on our goggles, we were able to sit around a table. I could like pass you some coffee. We could do the whole thing. So I think it is super cool the way we could shift things forward versus looking at each other on screens, sitting there, somewhat interacting and doing that sort of in-person feel would be cool.
We're gonna wrap the episode with everybody gets to ask you a random question. I'm sure you get this once in a while, but we're gonna make it fun. It's not gonna be incriminating. I'll start, right? So just curious, like we all know you with Refine Labs. Like you don't need to tell us about your personal life, but when you're not doing this, it's probably you do this a lot. What do you do? What does a weekend look like for you with the family? Like what do you get to do when you shut the camera off?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to cook and entertain. And so I feel like starting to really get back into it, especially after the last couple of years, with pandemic and lockdown. But my favorite weekend is having people over at the house, cooking good food, hanging out, playing games, drinking. We just moved to this beautiful house on the water, actually. And in the last week, we just got our first boat. So now the summer season, I'm going to become Captain Megan and we're going to go fishing and go cruising out into the Great South Bay. We're right on the bay here. So I grew up in California, but moved to New York, but very much the water is like my happy place. So cooking, that's entertaining, awesome. Fishing, hanging out on the water. Those are all the things I like to do for fun.
We're saving the metaverse experience for that versus the work. I think we want to be there.
We'll meet you on your boat, Megan.
Yeah, next podcast recording.
Yeah.
All right, next question. You got two more. Casey, you're up.
Yeah. You've obviously worn many hats. You still do. What has been your favorite role so far in your career?
So I think my favorite, hat that I wear is really people leadership. I think that the greatest personal satisfaction that I get is finding ways to give people opportunities or to create the conditions for people to achieve, their own professional goals. To give someone a chance to try a position that might be a little bit of a stretch for them and help them, make that leap to the next level. For me, I think impact on others and helping other people get to where they want to go is really kind of at the core of one of my reasons of why I do what I do. And so when I can be focused on things like that, that's definitely most enjoyable for me personally.
Awesome.
That's awesome. If you don't mind building on that, for people who are in their career and they're at a position that the environment isn't great. So obviously something is very important to y'all. What would you say that they should be doing to prepare or market themselves for a role at Refine Labs or something of the similar? What could they be doing to set themselves up to step into those kind of positions? Yeah,
definitely. And I have this concept that I like to talk to people about. At any given point, you're playing two games. The first game is your current game, the current company or role that you're in. But you're also playing the game of your life, right? Which is sort of the long game. And you have to be playing both at the same time. And so what I do say, if you're in a position and you feel like you have to sacrifice your integrity or your values or your physical or mental health, those are signs that you should find an exit plan right away, right? Don't sacrifice those things for your current game. Maybe those things are fine and you're just a little unsatisfied and you're ready for the next thing, which is fine, but maximize learning moments and opportunities in your current game. You're not going to be there forever, right? But find ways to maximize that experience. And then for the long game, everybody is different. One of the things when people come to me and, I want to find this job or I want to work here, I always like to challenge people and say, forget about that company or that job. What's your long-term goal? Begin with the end in mind. What are you trying to achieve? What are the things that make you happy? Think back on your prior experiences. What are things you liked and you didn't like? I think people can get really excited about a company or a role or get really fixated on something. And then sometimes when they achieve it, they realize maybe it's not actually even what I wanted. And so I encourage people to seek that clarity and that self-awareness, because what I find is when you actually do the work to get clear, opportunities will fall in your lap when you are clear on what you want. And what I find is when people are stuck or can't find the job, it's the universe putting them in a position where they need to do a little bit more self-exploration to then get to the place where they were meant to be. I don't know if that directly answered your question, but that's kind of that's where my head went.
No, and I love that you kind of touched on about the things that you can learn, even if it isn't the most optimal situation that you want to be in. That there's a lot to learn. So I've definitely been there before and kind of referred to it as the good enough job. It's not meeting all the things that I really, really want in the long term of for a company, a culture kind of thing. But it was a great opportunity and there was a lot to be learned in a situation during COVID where you're doing communications. There was a ton of crisis communications that I got to be involved in. So I was this is the good enough job where it's meeting those basic needs. It might not be exceeding them, what you're shooting towards, but there's a lot of things that you can still learn in that position as you prepare for the next kind of thing. So I think that's super cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, just if you we'll wrap up on this. Very, very inspirational. I hope people hear it. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I'd done all the applying of the blind copy, the blind email, the way I'm not doing it now, if that's the right thing to say, is in terms of looking back on that. At the time, I was frustrated because I was applying for these enterprise AE jobs and everyone was getting rejected. Now, I didn't come in warm. I didn't know anybody because I was trying to get into SaaS companies, go down the list, Gong, SalesLoft, new cutting edge AI companies. I got so frustrated. My wife finally looked at me. She said, "Why don't you take a risk on yourself?" She's like, do you believe in yourself? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, then don't get a job. Just go do your own thing. And I remember that's when it kind of became real that I had done the roles to get prepared for this. I didn't need another role. And as a matter of fact, if I would have taken one, I would have gone there and worked there for about 8 to 18 months and felt stuck and truly had outgrown the role. Not better than, just outgrown it. My skill sets that other people had taught me along the way that I'd worked on, the Chris Walker videos, the Megan Bowen videos, go down the list. I tell everybody on our team, I said, hey, if you're really into learning, extracurricular, if you will, I'm going to tell you 10 people to go watch, bookmark them on YouTube, commit the time to learn it, but you have to apply it. We were talking to Chris the other day, and he said, we asked him, who do you follow? He goes, I don't follow anybody. I'm like, of course you don't. I'm like, that makes sense. And he goes, no. When I create, I cannot consume. Because if I'm consuming content of others, it alters any testing I'm doing. It alters my opinion. What is that like in science? It's called like altering the sample,
control group.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you, the control group. And it made complete sense because although consuming content and living by learning from others, at some point you have to start writing your own story, your narrative, testing your own data versus trying to do what others do, because that never works. You have to be your authentic self. And that's who you are. So we loved having you on. Thank you so much for being here. I know you got another one of these to pop off of. You're super popular. You're driving boats. You like cooking food, slinging back drinks, just doing podcasts. You live the life. I love it.
I know. I can't complain. It was
right.
wonderful.
Well,
thank you for having me. It was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah. From your crew at Tidal, guys, Megan Bowen, she is creating your talent destination at Refine Labs. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. They have YouTube pretty much on lockdown. TikTok is getting on lockdown. Follow everybody at Refine Labs on every platform because they're killing it. It was an honor to have you on, Megan. Thank you so much, and have fun on the next podcast, but not as much fun as yet on this one.
It wouldn't be. It's not going to be as much fun as this, but great to meet you all and great conversation.
Yeah, peace out. Be good.